I'm Helen Stubbings of Hugs and Kisses. Welcome to my first YouTube video, sharing with you the tips and techniques that I use in all my products and patterns and teach around the world. Today we're going to talk about applique paper, which is a product that I sell, and it's basically a paper that is 50% soluble and 50% non-soluble, made from natural fibres, and it has a light natural glue coating on one side. So essentially it looks like a lightweight interfacing, and one side, if you hold it up to the light, is shiny, and that is the glue side, and the other side is dull. We sell it in packs of 20 cut letter size sheets, and those sheets can go through your inkjet printer, so that makes it very simple to print applique templates directly onto the paper. It is also semi-transparent, so we can, if we can't print on it through the printer, you can just place it on top of a template sheet in your pattern and use a pencil to trace the shapes. Now this technique that I use in all of my patterns, and I've taught in many places around the world, is also now in a newly released book called Simply Applique. It gives you step-by-step directions on the technique with a lot of diagrams, all the materials to use, of course, as along with a lot of projects. In the book we've included a CD stuck inside the back cover. On that CD you can open a file which will print the templates for the project you want directly onto your letter size applique paper sheets. If you can't print, then you choose the template file and you print out the template file so that you can trace the required amount of shapes. There's a third folder of files called layout files, and you would print that if you need a little assistance in laying out all your applique pieces when you're positioning them all onto the fabric ready to make your project. A few other examples from the book. So you would print full-size layout guides for this wall hanging, stick them all together, and then place your fabric over the top and position each piece when you're ready to put them all into place. Here's another little project. Once you have all your template pieces onto the applique paper, then of course the next step is to cut them out. It's good to use a long bladed pair of scissors when cutting so that we can get nice long smooth cutting strokes. The most important step in this process is the cutting, because the shape of your cut template is going to determine the shape of your final piece of applique. I like to cut the pieces roughly apart first so that I'm not dealing with big floppy bits of paper. And then you would cut them smoothly on the line. Now if you're concerned about the ink in your particular printer bleeding into the fabric, then cut just inside the line, so you're cutting that ink off. The template files on the CD in this book are set up to print in a light grey, so it's not a dark ink anyway, but if you were putting it onto a white fabric and you're concerned that the ink will either show through or bleed into your fabric, then cut the lines off during this step. When cutting shapes, open the blade right up, and as you slowly close the blade, turn the paper rather than turning the scissors. And this allows you to get nice, smooth, long sweeping cuts instead of short, choppy, pointy ones. And there's our first template. Just a few more little hints and tips about the applique paper. If you have scraps from your sheets that have gone through the printer, don't throw them out. You don't need seam allowances on the paper templates, so every little bit is precious. Keep every little bit and you'll be able to fit a small dot or a small leaf in all those scraps when you're tracing your next project. So keep all your pieces. When you're printing, every printer has a different margin that it will print to the edge of the paper. Now there's a bit of a fine line between not having any edges cut off or wasting too much paper by keeping them inside the margin. So if a little bit does not print because it's into the margin, then just either put it on your template sheet and trace the missing bit, or cut out one of the templates, sit that on top and use that as a shape just to finish off that missing line if you can't just use your eye to finish it off. Again, that's just saving paper. It is quite an expensive paper, not ridiculously, but you know, we don't want to waste. So rather than having huge margins when you're printing, print to the edge and then just fill in the gaps. If we had if you were tracing and we had a design that had say 100 of the same shape, then it's a couple of things you can do. You can make a plastic template from Template Plastic of one of the shapes, and then you can just use that to quickly trace around 100 times. As you're tracing, number them 1, 2, 3 and so on, so that you don't have to keep going back and counting. The other thing you can do when you've got lots of shapes that are exactly the same is that you can have several layers of paper at once. And as long as they're sitting nicely together, maybe 3 or 4 layers, then you can have the shape traced on the top layer and then cut out several layers at a time. That's when you have a lot of the same shape. In any of my patterns, if there's a shape that's going to sit underneath another piece, for example, okay, so this petal here sits underneath this circle in the centre. So on the template page, I would mark that with a small line. Also on the applique file, if you're going to print it, there would be a small line there. And that indicates that that edge is going to sit underneath another piece, so you won't need to be gluing that side. If you're tracing, always mark that small line so that you remember when it comes to gluing that you don't need to glue that edge under. Okay, we're going to continue and cut out all our shapes for this little piece, and we'll be back in the next video and show you what to do next.